All right. Okay, for the record, can I get your name and designation?
All right, so my name is Jeremy Stephen, and I'm the president of the Barbados Economic Society, but more so known as a lecturer in finance and economics at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus.
Okay. All right, Mr. Stephen, first off, could you just give us a summary, your take on the recent CDB reports concerning the state of St. Lucia's economy?
Okay, I'm not even sure or don't remember how recent this report was, but it's rather recent. And it says that the St. Lucian economy, though it works right now and is at least in a better condition than Barbados, there are some mistakes that are being made that could very well put St. Lucia in a situation where it has what you call a high debt overhang. That is, that most of government's resources, tax revenues, will go towards paying down on public debt, which obviously takes away then from government's ability to to provide welfare goods, to keep up public expenditure on roads, salaries, that and transfers and subsidies to state-owned organizations. So there was a lot of talk coming out of the St. Lucian election, the one from earlier this year, your most recent, of course, that stated that the removal of VAT or dropping the VAT rate drastically would have resulted in St. Lucia becoming very much dependent on debt financing as opposed to tax financing. VAT in St. Lucia, as it stands right now, makes up 1/3 of your revenue, of your tax revenue for your government, and it represents half the indirect taxes on goods and services. So to reduce VAT or to get rid of it altogether is to essentially tap into a major source of your revenue and just allow it to disappear literally overnight. So with that being said, the CDB cautioned a lot against tampering with the VAT rate. Or if you must tamper with the VAT rate, they were saying that you should at least remove the basket of VAT exempt and zero rated items, so that even if you've got a lower VAT rate, the coverage or the amount of persons paying VAT should not necessarily be any different or lower. It should be the same or at least greater. VAT, they do recognize, is a regressive tax, meaning that it tends to affect or be felt more so by poor persons as opposed to wealthier persons. But because, again, your economy or your government has designed VAT in such a way in the past that it depends very heavily on VAT, a removal of the VAT altogether or a drastic cut in the rates would have definitely resulted in too much of a drop in revenue. And given the current level of expenditure that St. Lucia has, the St. Lucian government has, it would have resulted in the government having to borrow too much at very high interest rates, as is seen in St. Lucia. The report also mentioned that the way to go about the economic recovery was really dependent on 6 pillars: raising labor productivity, reducing energy costs, and improving energy security. And all of this is for the both private and public sector. Improving access to finance by encouraging financial entities to work closely with entrepreneurs to incorporate adequate flexibility in loan contracts, etc. The 4th pillar was strengthening governance systems, so by increasing stakeholder participation and then addressing institutional weaknesses, especially those agencies, public sector agencies that interface directly with the private sector, and also by improving business facilitation. Funnily enough, although those seem a bit esoteric, I would say that, or not even esoteric, but high level, like not too easy to implement. Again, the CDB figures that if St. Lucia designs any policy, it must conform to one of these 6 pillars I mentioned before. And the CDB also expected that a removal of VAT or at least a great reduction in the rate would have also caused your unemployment rate to grow too much, and it's already high to begin with, if you get where I'm coming from. So their particular policy measures that they figure the government could use in the short term would have been by reducing the revenue loss from VAT exempt and zero rated goods, either by taking goods out of those categories, or at least reducing the goods that are VAT exempt and zero rated to those that are concerned with education and those that are in great demand by specific vulnerable groups such as children, females, to the extent that they're caregivers, the elderly, and the disabled. They figure that the government's fiscal balance should improve by 1% as a result. And they figure that you should limit the growth of the wage bill to the inflation rate until the performance-based pay system is implemented by fiscal year 2020-2021. They figure that the fiscal balance or the fiscal deficit should reduce by 3.6%, or your fiscal balance should grow by 3.6%. Think of the fiscal balance as a measure of government profitability or its ability to raise funding through revenue growth. And it could disperse that funding in social programs that can help the economy to grow much further. And there's some other ones as well that they figure, other additional policy measures, a lot of them actually, like ensuring that some of the portion of flows from the citizenship by investment program are set aside for stabilization in the event of some big shock, say like there's a war in between Russia and the United States of America. The cash cow that is that citizenship by investment program, the CIP, the money should be set aside just in case there's a war and you need access to foreign exchange, as opposed to how it's currently been spent on high amounts of wages and whatnot. So the report is one that I figured mirrors the advice, except for obviously the citizenship by investment programs, because we have none here, but it mirrors very closely the advice that has been given to the Barbadian government, and that we are slower to implement, but we are not as you in St. Lucia. Your government of St. Lucia is not anywhere as nearly as far gone as we are down the economic hole, or down the fiscal hole more appropriately. So you do still have some time to at least correct the slippage that is currently at play. At least this is what the CDB believes.
Okay. In your professional opinion, what do you think would be the best course of action for our government right now?
Oh, well, I mean, it's just about fiscal responsibility at this time, and also ensuring that you invest in projects that will redound to growth in the economy, not only in the medium term but in the long term. It is said that St. Lucia has not a good track record, or does not have a good track record, of those big capital investment projects actually turning into something economically viable in the medium or long term. In other words, the amount that you spend, you spend a lot more than, all right, let me put it this way: the return on investment on these projects that not only are currently happening in St. Lucia, but have been happening from the past administration to now, do not necessarily carry the best return on investment within the OECS. In fact, St. Lucia has one of the lowest rates of return on any of these projects. So if anything, a revision or a refocus on new growth-driven projects. It could be in tourism. I at this point don't know. It could be in, I've said already, it could be in more value-added manufacturing and agricultural products, as opposed to just simply trying to still sell bananas and basic raw goods and whatnot. A lot of your economic production is in that area, but, well, sorry, a lot of your people work in that area, but agriculture doesn't have that much of an impact on the economy as it once did. So there's a lot of government spend, for instance, going into agriculture that would never ever see a return. So there is a need to refocus and to revise how capital projects and how investment projects are looked at in St. Lucia, especially for long-term to medium-term growth. With respect to VAT, the VAT can be a good tax when you manage it well, and I would even say that if you do reduce the VAT rate somehow, ensure that you manage the rated and the VAT exempt goods very carefully, because that has been a problem in Barbados. That is the management of the funds that, well, not flow, but that concern VAT exempt goods and VAT and zero rated goods as well. Those goods tend to, let's say, the cost of administering the VAT exempt goods, the monitoring of the VAT exempt goods, the filing of VAT exempt goods, or the sales of VAT exempt goods and zero rated goods tends to outweigh the profits or the benefits potentially. So you have to be very careful about which goods you choose and try to keep them at a bare minimum, especially for those, or for the benefit of those who will be or could be considered to be economically and financially vulnerable. And those are really at this time, given, I guess, the scope of the call and the time that I guess I can have, that I could explain what I feel professionally St. Lucia should be doing. There are other things as well, but they're a lot more long term in my view, and I don't think that it would really help the scope of this call.
Okay. Can you provide your take on the introduction of the airport tax, or the reintroduction, I should say, of the airport tax?
Well, look, it all comes down to costing. This thing called elasticity is something else, right? And I'm not going to overcomplicate the call with economic jargon, but it really just comes down to how much they are going to place on people departing from St. Lucia or in transit or whatever, the price. So if it's too high, it would have a slight reaction, a slightly negative reaction to people arriving in St. Lucia, coming to St. Lucia, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as some people are saying. Now, I am getting the impression, however, that people are saying that that the new policy that may be proposed next week is that the shortfall that you're going to get, since you're reducing the VAT rate from 15 to 12.5%, would be, or seemingly be, made up by the introduction of this departure tax. And I think right now, without a close examination as to St. Lucia's current arrival numbers, it will be a bit difficult to tell you if in the short run, that is within a year, that the airport tax would make up for any shortfall in the VAT. I would say that much. What I would say is that it should be less so felt, that is, that shortfall, if the removal of the basket of goods, or removal or reduction of the basket of goods which comprise VAT exempt and zero rated goods, if that becomes a priority, actually, a primary initiative within the short run, then maybe you will have less of a reliance. If the case is that you are relying on the airport tax, you would have less of a reliance on the airport tax as having to make up a shortfall, where, as I said, once you spread the VAT, even if you have it at a lower rate, you shouldn't have that much of a big fall in the reduction of your indirect taxation in St. Lucia, and by extension your tax revenue. So with that in mind, I don't really see at first glance a big issue with the introduction of the airport tax right off the bat. I do think that people in St. Lucia would see it as an additional burden, but regional travel in the past has not really been affected by airport taxes per se, but more so by the service of the island carrier, which I know your Prime Minister has a big problem with as it stands. I would say that is probably a greater concern. And of course, I just think that at a regional level, we need to have more of a harmonization when it comes to the airport taxes, so then it makes it easier for us to travel intra-regionally. But in the past, over the last 7 years or so, with the introduction of airport taxes across the board and the increasing airport taxes, particularly here in Barbados, that has not been the critical reason that people have not opted to travel. So I don't think it would see a fall off, or you would see a huge fall off or noticeable fall off in arrivals into St. Lucia because of increasing ticket prices at this time. So,
okay, finally, given all what you've said there, the Prime Minister has said his aim is to grow the economy by 12%.
By how much? Sorry?
By 12.
12?
12, yes. I guess
over
his tenure. I'm not sure exactly what time frame he has given.
5.
But
2%, yeah.
is it really possible to reduce taxes, pay down the debt, and grow the economy at that same time?
Well, remember the CDB, if I can refer back to their report, which is very technical, they're not proposing a reduction in taxes. They're proposing spreading it, a better collection policy. And if you collect better, then the taxation shouldn't be that much of an impediment on growth, because if you continue the way you are, you may be forced as a country or as a government of a country to increase the tax burden on persons who already comply, which normally are those who have the means to invest capital. And that is a huge risk, particularly given that St. Lucia doesn't have capital controls. It could really have a quick negative effect on the growth of the economy. So with that in mind, I think what the CDB has prescribed is doable within his term. I just don't think that without any massive amounts of foreign direct investment towards projects that will give a good return, that St. Lucia should not expect any huge amount of growth within the next 5 years, which I believe is the term that the Prime Minister is referring to. It wouldn't be magical without any massive amounts of foreign direct investment. What I am saying, however, is that you are in a position that can help you stop the bleeding or the hemorrhaging that's going on right now in the St. Lucian economy, in your financial markets, in your agricultural sector, within your public sector, and the general private sector as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. Professor Stephen, I will be saving your number and will be in contact with you very soon.
That's my pleasure. I told Sheldon that I am a regionalist first and foremost, so please, if there's anything I can do to offer not just an outside perspective, but a Caribbean man's perspective, you have my number. Please call whenever you wish to.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much again.
All right, sir.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.